Today we look at another unfolding scandal at the post office. Stay with us. We'll be back after this. Hello, I'm Sarah Jane Mee, and this is the Sky News Daily. At this stage, let's face it, who hasn't seen the ITV show Mr. Bates and the Post Office? If you haven't seen it, you've definitely heard about it. A groundbreaking programme that eventually brought justice to the thousands of postmasters and mistresses who had been wrongly accused of stealing from the post office. It was all because of faulty computer software, Horizon. It took decades before the truth was uncovered. Well, now it appears that there could be another scandal involving different software, one that was used by postmasters in the 1990s. And today, the government has announced a compensation scheme for those affected by CAPTCHA, software that came before the now notorious Horizon system. My colleague Adele Robinson has been investigating this for some time now. Hello, Adele.
Hello, nice to see you.
As with any of these scandals, Adele, and I know that you followed this and the Horizon scandal, we want these stories to be victim-centred. They're at the heart of this. It's because of their resilience and determination that this is now in the public domain and these scandals are being exposed. So we're going to talk more in just a moment about what you've uncovered. But first, let's hear from some of the people you've been speaking to. This is Steve Marston, who used the CAPTCHA software in his branch, and he was convicted of stealing nearly £80,000 back in September 1998.
I always thought that the post office were straight up people, there was somebody or an institution that I'd be proud to work for, that, they're honest, genuine people, and this has just ripped it to shreds. It really has. I just can't believe it. Spent nearly 30 years thinking it was all me, and yet, if we'd have known this or been made available like in 1998, none of what we've had to go through this last 30 years would have happened. I just can't believe it. We wouldn't have lost the house in Blackpool, wouldn't have gone bankrupt. The kids would have no doubt had a much more settled lifestyle. We wouldn't have moved all around the country like we did, going from one job to another.
Your red wedding rings?
Yeah, we sold everything. I just can't believe it. It would have been a totally different life.
You can watch Adele's report on our Sky News platforms. And Adele, it's worth putting this into context for people, because what's happening there is a conversation between you and Steve, and you are showing him evidence that you uncovered. Evidence that said the CAPTCHA software was an accident waiting to happen. That report, written 4 months before his conviction. What was it like showing that evidence to Steve all this time later?
I mean, it was emotional. I know Steve quite well now. I know quite a few of the victims. I knew that we had this report. I knew that he was one of the ones, and he's just one of the ones. There were more who were convicted after this report was served on the post office. So I wanted to show him personally so that he could take his time, read through everything and ask any questions. But he was in shock. It's almost like you could see him thinking back over the best part of the last 30 years, which has been his life. It changed his life completely. What could have been different? What if that had been made public, or it had been, he'd have known about it. He would have said he would have gone about his case in a completely different way. What it would have meant for the other victims going forward, what it would have meant for Horizon. So meeting Steve was a really important, significant moment for this particular piece of journalism. But more importantly, it was because he needed to know. And also because what's going on in the background is, obviously, his is one of the cases being looked at by the Criminal Cases Review Commission. So hopefully this might help him.
You've been following this for some time now, and it was one of your reports on Sky News that jogged the memory of a man called Adrian Montague, and he got in touch with what turned out to be such a crucial part of this story for the victims.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible the moment when I found out that this man had come forward, because going back to February earlier this year, we did a story about Patricia Owen, and she was a sub-postmistress who was found guilty in 1998 of stealing from her branch. She pleaded not guilty. She fought with everything she had. She kept lots of documents, but actually she died a few years after her conviction. It was her family who kept the documents in the longer term. And the reason why they kept them was because they were ashamed that if they put them in the bin, they said someone might find them. It was all about shame. They didn't even, she has 2 daughters, they didn't even tell their husbands until last year that she'd been convicted. So we put this report out, and amongst the documents there were a few pieces of paper, really, but there were lots of court documents, there were lots of emails between the solicitors, things like that. And in a couple of them, it mentioned 2 computer experts, actually, and one of them looked at the computer system itself, so the hardware, and the others looked at the software, which was capture. And it just alluded to this other report. The assumption was that it was going to be negative with regards to capture.
And no one knew where this report was.
Didn't know where the report was, assumed it was
written
lost.
it.
Yeah, they didn't even have, I think they had the names of a couple of the computer experts. There were 2 who co-authored it. Anyway, they said to me that on the day of the trial of Pat Owen, back in 1998, there was a computer set up in the courtroom, a big computer, but it just sat there all week. They were expecting the computer expert to turn up and demonstrate the faults that he'd had found.
And it just sat there like a prop during the trial.
Yeah, and obviously memory is from 27 years ago. Speaking to Pat's husband, who's still around, he said all he can remember is that this computer sat there, but he was led to believe that the computer expert just had never turned up at court. But we tried our best to track this person down, but we were unable to. And then, as it turns out, on the day that report went out, it was his wife that was watching Sky News, saw it, said, hang on, this is the system I think you told me about. He looked at it and remembered Pat Owen, remembered her face, remembered her name. And then he decided, well, I'm going to get in touch. He then went back and thought, I'm going to look through my garage. And in one of the many, in a box, a plastic box, in this dusty garage, was the one, and it had the report on. He didn't know how significant it was at the time, but it was the only way, he said, that they had of substantiating her claim. But far more than that was what the report actually said. And it described capture as an accident waiting to happen. It was capable of producing absurd gibberish. It said if capture wasn't already being withdrawn, then it should be, recommending its withdrawal, saying it's not fit for purpose, saying that reasonable doubt exists over whether any criminal conviction should have taken place or should take place, because this was written before the trial. But he said he turned up. There are contemporaneous notes showing he did turn up at court, and he set up his computer. And then at some point, the defence barrister said to him, "Oh, you're not needed anymore, so you can just go home." So he did.
The defence barrister being the barrister for Pat Owen.
Yeah. So this is a report that was commissioned by her defending team, her solicitors. He said there was no reason ever given. Now, we did find the barrister, and he said he has no recollection of the case. So I don't think we'll ever quite know why.
Well, Adele, you bring that computer expert together with Pat Owen's family, and there are emotional scenes. There are tears, there's a sense of relief.
Good job Tina was watching Sky that day. You got good memory.
Well, I remember that one because, I just felt it was wrong. There was she shouldn't have been prosecuted. It was just, it was damning evidence.
She's missed out on so much because she's not here, and she's not here because of what happened. Yeah, it did wreck her life.
Is it hard to hear this?
It's hard because I know from reading the documentation that Mum kept, I know she fought really hard, and Dad's recollection of the court case, she fought everything she could fight for. And to know that in the background there was Adrian with this thing that would have changed everything, not just for Mum, but for every capture victim after that, I think is shocking and really upsetting. Really, really upsetting.
Comes back to that phrase, what if, because her family are very clear that if Mr. Montague had been allowed to give evidence, it would have cleared her.
That's what they believe, yes. If that report was never seen by the jury, that's new evidence. If they'd have seen it, would it have cleared her? I don't think we'll know. It's everything to them, this computer expert coming forward. It's given them fresh hope. And their case has actually been with the Criminal Cases Review Commission for over a year. So this, for them, is new evidence. But again, not just for them. It's new evidence of, A, what the Post Office knew at an early point, and B, the system itself. It's more contemporaneous evidence, which is what we've never had before, of a failed system or a failing system.
You talk about fresh hope, not just for the Owens family, but for other victims as well. Where is this report now? What does it do for their cases? What stage are we at there?
Well, the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the CCRC, the body responsible for looking into and investigating potential miscarriages of justice, they're currently looking at 28 potential capture-related convictions. It's a high bar. They look for new evidence. They'll be looking for any document that's new. The ultimate question really is, will this report help reach that high bar for not just Pat Owen's case, but all of them? And we don't know the answer to that question because at the moment, they're compiling evidence, they're investigating. So we'll see where the CCRC goes, but pressure is now ramping up, especially off the back of this report from the victims. They're ageing, or they've already passed, or their relatives are even ageing. Time is not on their side, one victim said to me today. So there is more of a momentum now behind a push towards putting pressure on the government to try and expedite, if they possibly can, the CCRC process, or maybe something else in the future after that.
Should we talk about the bigger picture? When it comes to capture, how many victims are there? Steve Marston is the figurehead for the number of victims. He's been described as the Alan Bates of the capture scandal. Of course, Capture and Horizon, two different scandals, but both involving software and the Post Office. So many similarities. This should have been the warning that stopped Horizon.
Yeah.
Sadly, tragically, in many circumstances, it was not. So when it comes to Capture, what's the scale of it?
Well, it's not as big as Horizon. We believe that there were 2,500 branches which used Capture between 1992 and 1999. And if you compare that to Horizon, it's maybe 14,000 off the top of my head. There were more than 700 convictions overturned in the Horizon scandal. We only have 28 in Capture currently being looked at, but there are more than 100 victims in total currently with Hudgell's solicitors, which is the solicitors who are the solicitors looking after the Capture victims. So many of them won't have come forward. Many of them probably will never come forward. I'm not sure we'll know for sure ever the true scale of this particular part of the scandal. But Liam Byrne, the chair of the Business and Trade Select Committee, is off the back of our report going to be writing to the Post Office asking for full disclosure. It's also already written to today the Department for Business and Trade and the CCRC too.
Well, this compensation scheme has been announced for those affected by this scandal in the 90s, the Capture scandal. How much is it? Does it make a difference? I know when we speak to victims of the Horizon scandal, it's not about compensation. It's about, what's the term? Financial redress. It's about financial redress. You know, they don't want to be compensated. They just want their money back and their lives back. So in terms of what's been announced today, how will that make a difference?
This particular redress scheme is expected to be opened up in autumn 2025, which already some victims saying this is too long. In terms of the figures, though, the government, they say, haven't set a specific figure. They're not necessarily constrained by any figure. Now, whether or not they're saying that because they don't want to set a figure and then it go past that, they don't know how many people could come forward, I suppose. So how can they set a specific figure on it?
Getting any kind of compensation or financial redress after these scandals is a long and complicated process, as we know, because while we talk about Capture, the Horizon scandal continues. That is not over. Some victims of this scandal still waiting for compensation. And of course, they've had an inquiry. They're having an inquiry. What stage are we even at with that?
The government said that they have now paid out £1 billion. If you look at the figures, progress is being made. If you speak to individual sub-postmasters, depending on who you speak to, some are still not happy. They're going through an appeal process they're not happy with. Sir Alan Bates isn't happy. He spoke out about it recently. He says he's been offered, I think, just under half or just over half of what his original claim, and it's a take it or leave it situation. So, yeah, I mean, the government has admitted there's still more work to be done, and they're hoping, I think, towards the end of this year that will be mostly completed. But you're right, it's been a long time. And these capture victims are kind of only just starting out. So it's great that they've got a redress scheme in place. But I think the elephant in the room is the criminal convictions, because, as we said, the CCRC, it's a lengthy process. So you've got an odd situation where the capture victims who were not convicted will get redress, but the ones who are most seriously affected will not be eligible for it until their convictions are quashed. And that could be, well, it could be years away, realistically.
Yeah, so much more work to be done. And I know that you'll be doing more work on this story, Adele. Thank you for bringing it to us. Steve Marston's going to join me on my show tonight. The UK Tonight is coming in with his wife, so it's going to be really interesting to talk to him, given the evidence that you've shown him recently that shows that he could have been cleared, along with Pat Owens and so many other victims of this scandal. Adele, thank you so much. That's Adele Robinson there, who's done extensive reporting on both Post Office scandals. A statement from the Post Office said, "We have been very concerned about the reported problems relating to the use of the capture software and are sincerely sorry for past failings that have caused suffering to postmasters. We are determined that past wrongs are put right and are continuing to support the government's work and fully cooperating with the Criminal Cases Review Commission as it investigates several cases which may be capture related." A Department for Business and Trade spokesperson had this to say: "Postmasters, including Patricia Owen, endured immeasurable suffering, and we continue to listen to those who have been sharing their stories on the capture system. Government officials met with postmasters recently as part of our commitment to develop an effective and fair redress process for those affected by capture, and we will continue to keep them updated." That's all for the Daily today. We will be back tomorrow.